Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Zachary Cohen, VSiN.com senior editor with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. Today is Monday, February 23rd. We are recording this at 10 a.m. Eastern, and it is a pretty short slate in the NBA tonight, but there is one heavyweight matchup that I have a big play on, and I do have another player prop for this evening. So let's get into all of it. We will start with that first game, which is the Spurs taking on the Pistons at 7 p.m. Eastern. This game is in Detroit, and the Pistons are 1.5 point favorites at home. This Pistons team has been arguably the best team in basketball all throughout the course of the season, but I do think this is a game where I'm looking to the Spurs to win outright. But what I did in this game was I took 1.5 at minus 110. I have it to win 1.5 units. The reason I took the points is just because when I was looking, it was between 1.5 points at minus 110 and money line at plus 100. I just thought it was worth it to have the extra point. Really not that big of a deal. If you can't get that, you need to take the money line, because I do think, like I said, this is a game I expect San Antonio to win. It's not that I have a huge gap between these two teams or anything when looking at like power rating for the entire season or just where each of one of them stands, moving forward. It's really that I just think that there's really small margins in a game like this. And I think that the Isaiah Stewart suspension kind of looms large here. I know that that's a little bit ridiculous to say about, just a good rotation player on a quality team. You really shouldn't lose a game because you're missing a guy like that. But this matchup really does call for some interior toughness and defense around the basket. And I do think that just missing what Stewart provides there is going to be big in this game. Stewart has a 7.3% block rate this year. That puts him in the 98th percentile in the league. He's a very good shot blocker, even though he's not the biggest player in the world. He's also just good at contesting shots and just, preventing people from getting to the rim and taking shots that they like. And this is a Spurs team that is pretty high up in the league in rim frequency. They're sixth in the NBA in terms of how often they shoot at the basket. So they're going to have more success finishing at the rim than they normally would. And I think that that's going to be because Stewart's going to be out. And then on the flip side of things, when looking at the Spurs defense against the Pistons offense, it's a Detroit team that is third in the NBA in rim frequency. So they shoot, at the basket more than all but two teams in the NBA. And then it's not that surprising when you think about how often guys like Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren are scoring in the paint. But this Spurs team is top 5 in the NBA in both rim defense and defense inside 10 feet. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama, with his length and like defensive awareness, has a lot to do with that. He's one of the best rim presences in the entire NBA. He is the best, honestly, not one of the best. But yeah, that's why everybody wants him to win DPOY every year. But it's just going to come down to the game limit. But Wemby's ability to block shots in this game against this team is going to be big, especially when you throw in the fact that on top of that stuff with the shots around the basket, the Spurs also make more threes per game than this Pistons team at 13 per game on the year. Pistons down at like 11.3. I know that Detroit's added some shooting over the last couple of weeks, but I do think San Antonio is the better shooting team, at least by a little bit. So I just think there's a lot working against Detroit in this game. And I'll also throw in the fact that the Spurs have won 8 straight games. They've won the last 7 of those games by double digits. So they're absolutely blowing teams out. They're thriving right now. I know that the Pistons are also on a winning streak of their own, but it's a little shorter at 5 games. But I do think that just in a clash of 2 of the better teams in the league, you want to be at 100%. And the Pistons are not there because Stewart's suspended. And also, under JB Bickerstaff, Detroit in these types of games has not been great. Just 2-8 straight up when facing teams with winning percentages of 70% or better. So while this Pistons team has gotten way better under Bickerstaff and they've made the leap into being like an Eastern Conference contender, we haven't quite seen it when they're playing the very best that this league has to offer. So in this matchup, I'm expecting the Spurs to come out on top. But like I said, it's not like a sweeping statement about where I have both these teams long term. I'd maybe feel differently about this if Stewart was playing, and looking forward to seeing Detroit getting back to full strength and hopefully no more, brawls that take some of these guys out of the rotation, because you just can't afford to have that in this long of a year. I know that the Pistons have been able to survive it. They haven't lost since losing either Duren or Stewart, but you just don't want to deal with that. You want to be just full strength, full throttle, building chemistry for the postseason and making statements where you can. In a game like this, like you could, if you had Stewart and you win, or they still could win, but if they had Stewart and won, they would have felt really good about their chances, of winning, the NBA title, even though a lot of people, including myself, view them as maybe one of the, lower end of the, top tier in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, this is a big, big game. We're going to learn a lot about both of these teams. Moving on to a game that has way less meaning in just every way imaginable. It's the Kings at the Grizzlies at 8:10 p.m. Eastern. This is a game where the Grizzlies are 3.5-point favorites. Totals 233.5. And I don't have anything for you in terms of sides or totals in this one. I've talked a lot about the tanking in the NBA. These are two of the teams that were on my list at VSiN.com when I wrote about the tanking teams. I had 8 teams the rest of the way that you really can't trust when you're looking to make bets because they have zero incentive to win. These are two of them facing one another, and I just have no idea how these games are going to work themselves out. But I do like G.G. Jackson in this game to go over 22.5 points, rebounds, and assists at -115. You're not seeing a lot of players playing for either one of these squads, but for Memphis, there's no Santi Aldama, no Zach Edey, no Cedric Coward. There are opportunities in the front court, and over the last 3 games, Jackson has been one of the guys that has gotten a lot of them thrown his way. He's playing just about 28 minutes per game over the last 3 contests, averaging 31.8 combined points, rebounds, and assists in those games. And overall, I just think this is a really strong matchup for him because the Kings are the worst defense in the NBA when looking at guarding inside 10 feet, so in the paint. And Jackson, while he does like to kind of get his threes up as well, is just a very athletic and long player on the perimeter that will attack the rim. He will finish in transition. If the Kings don't have a way to stop it, it should be a game where he has another great game as a scorer. And he is coming off an awesome performance against the Miami Heat, where he just completely lit them up for 28 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. I don't know that you could expect that every single night, but I do think that we're going to see some Memphis players go off in extended minutes, and I think that he's one of them because this Memphis team, the rest of the year, like I said before, no reason to win, but they also need to play some of these young guys big minutes and just kind of figure out whether they can develop them or whether they could be a part of the long-term future of this Grizzlies team as they kind of enter the Zach Edey, Cedric Coward version of this squad. And I just kind of think that Jackson's going to be one of the ones that they're going to be evaluating heavily the rest of the year. And I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities. So I think tonight, Jackson to go over 22.5 points, rebounds, and assists is a good look. Attention any listeners who are new to VSiN, signing up for our free daily newsletter is a great way to catch up. Delivered straight to your inbox every morning, VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, and strategies for the day's betting menu. Sign up for free now at vsin.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That's vsin.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. All right, let's move on now to the final game of the night. It's the Jazz taking on the Rockets. Houston is a 13.5-point favorite. Total is 228.5, and this game tips at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I don't have anything for this game right now because there is a pretty, crowded injury report for Utah. But I will note that Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen are both questionable for this game. And if you do see both of them out there, I think that the Jazz on the first half spread is a good play, and it's probably one that I'm going to be making. I have a really strong lean to them at +8.5 in the first half right now, but I would rather know for sure that they're going to be out there and even take that down to 7.5 or so if I have to. And the reason that I like this is just that the Rockets have been struggling lately. I think that both offensively and defensively, things haven't looked as good as they need to. And I think Ime Udoka is having a lot of trouble just kind of figuring out what lineup combinations he can trust. I think that, Shepherd gives them the most offensively, but Udoka clearly doesn't like the way that he defends and chooses to play a lot of different defensive first players over him. That makes the offense very, very ugly, and it makes life on Kevin Durant very difficult. Meanwhile, Utah, when they have Lauri and Keontae out there, they've been competitive. This is a team that can, just kind of stay in there and hang around in games when they have those two out there because both of those guys have performed at borderline all-stars this year. And I just think it's a lot of points for them to be getting in one half. especially when they're going to be playing hard in that half. Like what we've seen from Utah when they do have the starters out there is that, the big players, the best players tend to play their normal minutes in quarters 1 to 3, and then they pull all of them for the fourth quarter and just kind of hope that the bench players lose them the game so that they can move up in the pecking order of the draft. But that presents opportunities in game as well, because like I said before, like if they're going to be pulling players in the fourth quarter, you're going to have opportunities to bet the other team live. So this really feels like a game where you might be able to do pretty well going Jazz first half on the spread, and then at some point in the second half, jumping on the Rockets on the spread and just hoping that they take care of business from there against a depleted Jazz team and a Jazz team that's throwing in, the end of bench guys hoping to lose the game. So it's a really interesting time in the NBA right now with the tanking. I've talked a lot about it. I think we're kind of learning a little bit over the next couple of weeks about what these rotations are going to look like. I think that very quickly, ever since I've written that article at VSiN.com like 4 or 5 days ago, we've seen that the Bulls are one of the teams that will be competitive every night. I mean, they almost beat the Knicks outright last night. I think they're 2-1 against the spread ever since I published that article. And just overall, like they're showing a level of competence that like other tanking teams are not. There's been a lot of the tanking versus tanking matchups. Don't like those. Those are still complete stayaways for me. But yeah, I'll be making note of like what these teams are doing over the next couple of weeks to just try to figure out how we could profit on them. I think that the Bulls are going to be a profitable team at least over the next couple of weeks, because I think we're still going to see kind of like inflated like this is a tanking team numbers, but they're trying a little bit harder than that. But yeah, it's going to be case by case, but a lot of it's ugly. And the Jazz are really unique in the way that they're doing it with the pulling the players in the fourth quarter, having Jaren Jackson Jr. get surgery on something that very well could have waited till after the season, it seems. Hopefully I'm not mistaking that and, calling him out, and he absolutely needed it, but it did look like it was a growth that was bothering him, but something that could have been addressed in the offseason, and they just chose to do it now. But yeah, Utah's the most aggressive of this bunch when it comes to tanking. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some big picture future stuff. Nothing crazy. Like we just haven't had a lot of results that have really impacted my thinking in terms of the long-term future. Like yesterday's Cavaliers Thunder game, it wasn't really anything that made me worry about the Cavaliers future that we have. If you tell me at 6-1, or if you're trying to jump on a team now at about, 3-1, 4-1, whatever it is, I do think that this Cavaliers team just kind of overlooked the Thunder yesterday, and they were just tossing the ball all over the place. They figured they were going to win with no SGA, no J-Dub out there, but they let it get out of hand too early, and they ended up having to dig themselves out of a hole that I think was a little bit too big. And just overall, it was not something that I'm worried about with Cleveland. Actually, I said this on my By the Book spot with Dave Ross and Jensen Lewis this morning, that I actually was more impressed. What is that, Ryan? It might sound like Ryan Russillo. I came away more impressed with the Cavaliers in that loss, but I actually did, because I think that Cleveland throughout that game, we saw Kenny Atkinson just throwing in different lineups, and you just really saw the depth that they have, at least in the backcourt, where if they need some scoring, they can throw Dennis Schroeder in there. He's still a guy that can attack the rim. He can knock down shots, and he also gives, some feisty on-ball pressure defensively. If they need a 3-and-D guy, Keon Ellis can come in and give them some really, really strong play on the defensive end, and then also a knockdown three-point shooter that can also make some plays in transition. Just seeing that in addition to what they already have in both Donovan Mitchell and James Harden offensively, they have one of the best backcourt rotations in the league. I think they have the best starting backcourt in the league. And I do like what they have on the wing in Jalen Tyson, Dean Wade. I think that if you get, Max Strus back, I'm still waiting to see what that's going to look like. It's been forever, but you get Max Strus back, all of a sudden you have a solid wing rotation. And obviously the bigs there are great in Mobley and Allen, and only getting better with Harden and Mitchell making plays for them. So overall, I just think that that was a loss that they probably should have avoided. I thought that once they got it close and they ended up taking the lead in that third quarter, that they were going to find a way to win. But I think that they used too much of their legs throughout the comeback, and it just got away from them early on. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it. In fact, like I said, I was actually really impressed just kind of watching all of the different guard combinations that they had. But yeah, no big takeaways in terms of results. I did tweet that I was going to talk a little bit about the Bucks. Not going to chew your ears off about it, but I did add a pizza money play on Milwaukee at 250 to 1 to win the Eastern Conference. I already have, and I've given out Bucks to make the play in at plus 750, go over their in-season win total of 31 and a half, and make the playoffs at 25 to 1. Those were all plays I posted to the website in my trade deadline tracker. So hopefully you were following along there as I was doing that. If I tell you to read something, there's always going to be some nuggets in there. So yeah, there's always a threat that there's going to be some picks in anything that I write. But yeah, I had those 3 plays on the Bucks after they did not trade Giannis at the deadline. I saw some outlandish numbers on them, and I'm taking it a step further, but not too far, by throwing like a 0.1 unit play is what I put on it for them to win the East. And I know that that's crazy, but that's why this is like something that you should not be putting a lot on. I just think that 250 to 1 is a little crazy when you look at just kind of the way this might shake out in the Eastern Conference, where they're only 2 games back of the Hawks right now. And they've been playing some good basketball, 6-4 in their last 10 games. And I think that we've seen now over the last few games, at least, they have a really good guard rotation themselves. It's not quite as good as Cleveland's, but Ryan Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr., and Cam Thomas all give you a little bit of something else. And I just think that the guard rotation looks way better today than it did kind of earlier in the year when they had Giannis. And I think that their combination of like firepower in the backcourt and then what Giannis is going to come in and give them on both ends of the floor is going to make them pretty dangerous as we just kind of look at the rest of the season and the play-in. And if they do find a way to get into the play-in, I don't really see anything preventing them from getting into the playoffs. At least like just kind of looking at the teams now, like I'm not really worried about them losing to either the Magic or the Heat. I think that the Bucks are better than both of those teams at the moment. And if they just get in, I think that they have a chance in any series that they play. I know it's going to be like a puncher's chance and not like something where they'll be favored, but it really depends who they play. I mean, it would probably be Detroit, just looking at everything right now. But I am a bit of a Pistons skeptic in that I think that they are the worst of the top tier teams in the Eastern Conference. I've kind of said that all along. And I just think if you throw them on a piece of paper against the Bucks and compare position by position, you kind of get into a situation where like it doesn't look that much better for Detroit when just looking at the rosters. And even though the Pistons have executed at a way higher level, it would not shock me if the Bucks just were to find a way to beat them. And honestly, like I've said this all year long, I've said this in the offseason before, talking about this season, so last offseason, I think that Giannis with a competent group of like scorers around him can win any single playoff series. The question is really, can he win multiple? And the answer is probably no. But with a play like this, you're not really hoping, or you're not like banking on him winning the Eastern Conference. What you're hoping for is he wins a playoff series or 2, and you get a really good like cash out offer, or you can make a good play on a hedge, which will always pay out better than a cash out offer. But I just think that you could take this at 250 to 1 at MGM, a crazy number for a team that I think is decent, and just hope for the best in the long run. Do not put a lot on this. I can't stress that enough. Like if you get like a $5 free bet, that's what you should be looking at, here. Not anything more than that. Don't go crazy. I did not put a lot on this. I have very little on this, but yeah, I think the Bucks, like they're better than that number is really all I'm going to say. And I do think that what I've seen over the last week or so has played into that. I think that I've been really impressed with their guards. I wish this team had one more like 2-way contributor on the wing. Like Kuzma's just been so bad for Milwaukee. It's really upsetting. But yeah, if this team can find a way to add like a wing that can either knock down shots or defend or both, they would be really cooking. It's not going to happen this season, but it is part of the reason that I think Milwaukee is going to build on Giannis rather than move on from Giannis in the offseason. Because if you go out this summer and you offer like the Pelicans 3 first-round picks for Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, like that's the type of trade that I think makes you the best team in the Eastern Conference. And not positive that that's a trade the Pelicans would turn down, even though New Orleans seems to think that they're way better than they are. Maybe they think that Murphy's a part of their winning future, but I don't know. It seems like he's available for 3 first-round picks. I would try to play hardball and say we want Herb too, but yeah, I think that there are trades to be made that make this Bucks team an Eastern Conference contender again because of some of the things that we've seen out of this backcourt. And that backcourt, by the way, insanely cheap because Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. both on discounts. Cam Thomas not going to be making a lot of money next season if they bring him back. So I think there are ways for them to creatively build out this team, even with Lillard's salary on the books. So yeah, been impressed by the Bucks. Probably like the only one in the world still watching the Bucks or caring, but I do think 250 to 1 is a little bit too crazy. It's not something I expect to win, so don't take away from this that I think the Bucks are winning the Eastern Conference. I'm just saying that there's a slightly better chance than those odds suggest that there is. So that's something that you have to pay attention to. And then I will just say quickly, no bets to be made on this, I don't think, because the Lakers, I think, are a little too far out in front. But sadly, I'm no longer seeing the opportunity for the Suns to win the Pacific Division. I really thought they were going to do it. I think they're a better team than the Lakers, but Phoenix's injury luck has just been absolutely terrible over the last couple of weeks, and it ended kind of last 2 games ago, not last night, with Brooks breaking his hand, now set to miss a couple of weeks here at least. I actually have not seen an update on exactly how long he's going to be out. They've just been saying indefinitely. But yeah, Dylan Brooks breaks his hand. Devin Booker's currently out a couple of games. It just feels like anytime someone comes back, they're hit with another long-term absence. Really a bummer because I think the Phoenix is one of the most exciting teams to watch. I am a Suns fan, so I obviously really want them to win more than other people do. But yeah, I had some futures on both the Lakers and the Suns in the Pacific, and I actually ended up getting to a point where I invested more in the Suns and actually will lose a little bit if the Lakers win the division. But right now, looks like Los Angeles is going to run away with it, and the Suns, as much as I hate to say it, might be a bet against team without Brooks, just because Dylan Brooks is so important to this team right now. I mean, he's completely been at the forefront of changing the culture in that locker room, of just making it, a defensive-minded, hard-nosed team that plays hard every single night, can always be counted on to defend, and that's everything that they were hoping for in the offseason. They almost lucked into it with that being the deal. Like, they pretty much had to take in moving Durant to the Rockets. They pretty much had to take Brooks for salary purposes, but he ended up being exactly what they needed. And not just defensively, like offensively, he's been giving them 20 points per game and awesome isolation scoring. So it's going to be a big absence on both ends of the floor, and not sure Phoenix is going to deal with it very well. So I definitely think it's a bet against team. And like I said, I think the Lakers are going to win the Pacific Division. But yeah, we'll recap the best bets for tonight in a second. But quickly, I just wanted to say, if you're looking to sharpen your edge this NBA season, VSiN Pro is where to start. Get advanced analytics, player prop projections, and expert insights used by serious bettors every single day. Try it out for only $9.99 for your first month and see what smart bettors are using to beat the books. Head to vsin.com/subscribe and check out all the subscription options. I've said it before, $9.99, the intro offer, is awesome right now specifically because I believe it'll give you access to the MLB betting guide, which just came out, which was awesome work by both Adam Burke and Jensen Lewis. But also, you get all my NBA stuff, but then all of the March Madness stuff that we have coming up. We start with conference tournament previews end of this week. So we're going to have a bunch of those up soon, like one for every single conference tournament. And then, yeah, our March Madness betting guide is a beast. You do not want to bet March Madness without it. So great time to join. Can't stress that enough. But let's recap the best bets that I have for tonight before I send you off. I have the Spurs plus 1.5 at -110 to win 1.5 units against the Pistons. And I have G.G. Jackson over 22.5 points, rebounds, and assists at -115 versus the Kings. And as I mentioned, I might end up on the Jazz in the first half spread, but that is not an official pick right now. If it becomes one, you will see it at vsin.com, either on the Pro Picks page or at the bottom of my story for today. I'll just throw it at the bottom. But yeah, hopefully we have a good night tonight. Really ugly weekend. Yesterday was absolutely terrible for me. So definitely hoping to bounce back tonight, but very much looking forward to another full slate tomorrow. So make sure you join us for a Tuesday edition of Hardwood Handicappers, where we have a lot more action to get into than we did tonight.